Cheese butter is the delicious gourmet cheese melt that blends 4 indulgent cheeses and seasoned butter. I love this stuff. Perfect on bread, bagels, sandwiches, veggies, and more. And you'll get 20% off when you go to cheesebutter.com/Pacman. The link is down below. Let's start today talking about food shortages. There is a new storyline, a new narrative claims that food shortages are imminent in the United States and that there's going to be no food. The shelves will be bare, as the failed former president Donald Trump would often like to say. Joe Biden even said it. This was about 3 weeks ago, and the context was the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the related sanctions and responses. Here's Joe Biden 3 weeks ago.
Nothing more to report. With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
So on the other hand, we also have kind of the more hyperbolic, fear-based kind of reactionary claims. Here's one example from a right-wing host, Dan Bongino, who had a segment called "The Devastating Food Crisis is Coming. Please prepare now." And the preppers loving this.
The food crisis coming up. It's a topic we've covered on the show and the radio show often.
Right.
There's a devastating food crisis coming, ladies and gentlemen, and you darn well better be prepared. Listen, I care about you a lot. I'm not kidding. I love the audience. That's why there's an email on our website. That's why I leave the Facebook page open for your messages.
Right.
I am here for you. I am one of you. I came from you. I'm a middle-class kid who had a middle-class job with a middle-class life.
Okay. So anyway, without his full biography, the point is the right is increasingly saying food shortages are coming. Many of the people predicting the food shortages will also sell you food, packaged food, bonus buckets. There's a lot of comments, if you look at the Dan Bongino piece, where people saying, from my Bible study group, we can get food and all of this different stuff. So let's talk it through. Is it possible that we could have a food shortage? Of course. Of course. There have been food shortages in history, and they are possible. The first step in really thinking critically about this is, what do we mean by a food shortage? Because there are some people who seem to think that a food shortage is, my favorite orange juice wasn't available. I had to get pulp instead of no pulp. Or I like turkey bacon, but there was no turkey bacon, so I had to consider regular bacon or plant-based bacon. That's not really a food shortage. Now, I'm going to get to that, which is the products we expect just aren't there. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a moment. But a food shortage, when we talk about it economically, is there's not enough energy, or there's close to not enough energy, meaning calories available for the proper nutrition of a population. And I would even go further. I would say there's not enough calories available from a reasonably diverse set of foods. What I mean by that is, imagine that in order to meet our caloric needs, everybody had to be drinking corn syrup. Like, okay, we'd be getting our calories, but I would still consider that to be a food shortage, because it's not a calorie shortage, but it's definitely a shortage of a reasonably diverse diet. So the first question is an actual shortage based on that softer definition, not even going to be able to really get the food groups we need, is that likely this year based on the evidence we have? And the answer is no. It's hard to say more, but there's not going to be a food group calorie deficit. There's going to be enough meat. There's going to be enough dairy. There's going to be enough produce. There will be enough grains. We're not going to actually have a shortage of calories from any particular food group. Now, might there be a situation where in Portland, Oregon, there's no chicken breast for a day at the local store and you've got to get chicken thigh? Yeah, that could happen. Those things anecdotally are happening, and we'll talk about why in a moment. But my store was out of a particular cookie, and so I had to get the Milano. Most of us aren't savages, so we get dark chocolate. You might have to get the milk chocolate. I know it's not good. It's ugly. I get it. It's ugly. I'm for dark chocolate as much as the next guy, but that's not really a food shortage, right? The shelves aren't bare. Now let's get into what might happen, just so we all know and we're aware and we're prepared. Is it possible that specific products might ebb and flow in their supply so that you might have to choose something different that you're used to getting. Yeah, that is possible. And that's definitely different than what most of us in the United States are used to. The war in Ukraine is likely to disrupt wheat and sunflower seed oil. And sunflower seed oil is actually in a lot of foods that many of us buy. But it's more likely to be disruptive to countries other than the United States. The U.S. is actually a big wheat exporter and producer. Poorer nations that that rely more heavily on imports of wheat are going to be more at risk, for example. So like the wheat issue will hit Egypt, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Turkey, some other countries. There will likely not be shortages, but there might be some limited availability of meat, dairy, and some animal products. There might also be a shortage, lack of availability, I think is the word I should say, of some plant-based vegan proteins. Those for two reasons. One, there are some people who, if they don't see the meat that they want, they might try the plant-based alternative. The plant-based alternatives are also highly processed foods, and the supply chain can't be accelerated that easily. A lot of those processed items, you can't easily adjust the supply chain quickly. It can take 6 to 9 months. So you might see that. So we might see slight, sporadic, regional, temporary lack of availability of certain products. Now, what could cause the appearance of an actual shortage? Panic buying, like we saw early in the pandemic. And in that case, is it really a shortage if a ton of people are pre-purchasing a year's worth of whatever? And what I mean by that is, think back to the so-called toilet paper shortage. There was no toilet paper on the shelves. That's true. But the reason was that a ton of people bought a year's supply. So they're good now for a year. And as we saw, once the supply normalized, we had fewer people buying the toilet paper because they pre-purchased it in the first month of the pandemic. So that was an apparent shortage. It wasn't a real shortage. It's also, by the way, interesting how a lot of the producers of some of these foods, Tyson, Purdue, for example, in poultry, they've had record profits above and beyond the rate of inflation. So it's not just inflation that's driving their profit at a time of allegedly significantly higher costs to them. So I'm not ready to say that there is price gouging going on, but it is interesting that profit margins remain at record highs despite supposedly higher costs and inflation and all of that. So we're going to follow it. That's the best assessment we have right now based on the information that we have. There is a very disturbing video of police aggressively arresting an 8-year-old for allegedly stealing a bag of potato chips in Syracuse, New York. Now, originally, this story was reported as a 10-year-old boy that was being really treated like an adult for allegedly stealing a bag of potato chips. We have since learned that this is actually, as of right now, believed to be an 8-year-old. Could that also be wrong? Maybe. But as far as we know right now, this is an 8-year-old. I'm going to play the video. The video is disturbing, not in a gory sense. It's just disturbing in terms of how these police officers are treating this kid. Let's take a look.
What is y'all doing? What is y'all doing?
Guess. Guess what I'm doing.
Hey, he like a baby to me. Why you?
Guess what I'm doing.
I don't know what you doing. I just see you snatch him up off the.
No.
So what? So what's going on then?
You're stealing stuff. If he breaks into your house to steal something.
Nah, man. What he selling, a bag of chips? So y'all treat me like a whole cold-blooded killer?
Keep walking, dude. You don't even know what you're
Keep
talking
walking.
about.
I know what I just came up and see. I know the I just came up and see.
Okay, what did you see?
I see y'all snatching him up a bike like you're a grown-ass man. Ain't he saying it?
All right. Now, the kid is black, and we have to consider the racial component here. And I told the story on our live stream yesterday. When I think I was like 10 or 11, and my little brother was 8 or 9. We went grocery shopping, and we get home. And I remember this like it was yesterday because it was so notable to me. We get home, and my brother pulls out a king-size Snickers bar. Not even the normal size. This is the big boy. It's like it's like a huge steel rod. The king-size Snickers. And my mom said to my brother, "Sir, where did you get that?" Now, she didn't call him sir. She said, where'd you get that? And he says, "The grocery store." And what do you mean? Where was it? It was at the checkout. I got it. And my mom explained, no, we can't do that. That's stealing. You can't do that. And to teach the lesson, they went back to the grocery store and they said, he took this and we didn't pay for it. So we're coming back to return it. And, management was like, oh, thank you so much for being honest. You know what? For your honesty, go ahead and keep it. And I think my mom insisted on paying for it then, to teach a lesson and whatever. And it was really notable and it sticks out in my mind. And it was like, this is the way that things are supposed to be done. Imagine if police were involved for the Snickers. It would just be outrageous. It wouldn't be justice. It wouldn't be educational. It wouldn't be something that would point my brother in the right direction when it comes to a place. I mean, there's just no upside to handling it in that way. Now, my brother wasn't black at the time. He's still not black. In fact, some people might be shocked that he's still not black. So obviously we have this question of the racial component. Would this situation have been handled the same way if a white kid had stole, a jelly bean or whatever the case may be? We can't say because they're two different situations, but it certainly doesn't look good. We've now heard from the, no, this is the wrong story. We've now heard from the mayor of Syracuse who weighed in. This is Mayor Ben Walsh, and said that he was concerned when he saw a boy put in the back of a cruiser after allegedly stealing a bag of chips. And the mayor said from what he saw, the boy wasn't placed in handcuffs. The officer knew the child from prior interactions and explained to him he was being taken home. The officers returned the child to his family and discussed the incident before leaving without filing any charges. So it seems as though the perspective they're taking is sort of like, well, listen, he wasn't cuffed, he wasn't arrested, he wasn't charged. He was just basically taken home and explained, it was explained to him why what he did was wrong. But the manhandling is absolutely absurd. Even the placing in the back of the police car. I mean, listen, again, when I was growing up, when an officer got involved in one of these, let me help, right? Let me be the positive influence. You put the kid in the front, right? And now you could say, well, but sometimes the police cars have the laptops in the front. The entire handling is, wow, this is a criminal. And unfortunately, this is exactly the type of thing that can point kids, to adversarial perspectives with police. It can point them in the direction of repeating these actions in the future. So it's all horrible. Now, meanwhile, earlier in the week, I mentioned there was a shooting in Syracuse. And it's not like there's a shortage of other stuff police can be involved in. There were like 4 officers involved, at least, with this 8-year-old kid. We now have learned that a Syracuse man has been arrested in that Armory Square shooting that I told you about from over the weekend. And so it's not even a case of like there's nothing else to do in Syracuse. It's not a direct line where like if these 4 officers weren't, taking this kid into custody or whatever, that they would have been involved in solving or preventing that shooting. Okay, I get that. But there is not a sort of there's nothing for police to be doing in Syracuse sort of situation. So let me know your thoughts. Many people outraged over this, some saying the police handled it fine. That's not my perspective, but I would love to hear from you. You can find me on Twitter at @dpackman. One of our sponsors is CuriosityStream, the only subscription streaming service just for documentaries. My girlfriend and I have been using the CuriosityStream platform at home nonstop. I can tell you from personal experience, much better documentary selection than Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon. On CuriosityStream, I'm always finding documentaries by the world's best filmmakers, stuff you can't find on other streaming services. Last month, they added a ton of awesome new titles to the library. I just finished watching Becoming Martian, about the future of the human species and its possible path through Mars. But there's documentaries on every topic imaginable: science, nature, history, politics. If you love documentaries the way I do, you are not going to find a better source of brand new, award-winning docs anywhere else. CuriosityStream is giving my audience 25% off, which means you can subscribe for just $15 a year. Not a big price tag for the hours and hours of enjoyment I know you will get from CuriosityStream. Just go to curiositystream.com/Pacman25. The link is underneath this video. We're now learning about the next phase of obstruction of the House committee investigating the January 6th Trump riots, and it just doesn't stop. Every week we learn about something like this. The new one is that John Eastman, that's the lawyer who wrote the memo explaining how maybe Mike Pence could overturn the election results. That guy, John Eastman, is now blocking 3,200 Trump-related documents from the House January 6th committee, as reported by CNN. Meanwhile, Business Insider is reporting that Eastman is refusing to hand over 37,000 pages of emails to the Capitol riot committee. So let's go through what's going on. John Eastman, a far-right lawyer for then-President Donald Trump, who wanted to block his electoral loss in 2020, is withholding about 3,200 documents from the House Select Committee investigating the riots. Eastman previously was ordered by the court to turn over 101 documents after claiming some were confidential legal communications. Since, he's continued to work through 100,000 pages of emails from his Chapman University account that the House committee wants. At this time, Eastman is arguing that the thousands of documents comprising about 36,000 pages should stay confidential. Federal Judge David Carter may continue to weigh whether he can keep those pages secret. Meanwhile, John Eastman is refusing to hand over 37,000 pages of emails to the committee. He says they're shielded by attorney-client privilege. A judge is weighing the argument. Eastman is known for writing a memo detailing how Trump could overturn the 2020 election. I think at this point, we should never again be subjected to a single word about Hillary's emails. We should never again be held and brutally pummeled with the idea that Democrats don't handle data correctly, they don't handle information correctly, or any of it. Now, I will be subjected to that. You will be subjected to that. We all are going to be subjected to that, but we really shouldn't have to. And the strategy at this point is abundantly clear. They are trying to run the clock out on the January 6th investigation, and they indeed may succeed. That's the saddest part. I have read a bunch of legal opinions about the strategy, and whether it's a moral strategy or not, whether it is ultimately legal that they can just refuse to turn stuff over. By the time it's adjudicated, Republicans may have control of the House, and this investigation will be donezo. And there's really not that much that can be done about it. That seems to be the strategy, because Republicans have made it very clear. If they take control of the House in November and are sworn into that control in January of 2023, which is how it works, this investigation is over. And I believe they will almost certainly at least attempt impeachment proceedings of President Joe Biden. I don't think they will go anywhere, but I think that they will attempt it. They're telling us they're going to attempt it. Many of them are, and I believe them. And this is why they are stalling in this way. If the circumstances were different, where there were going to be, if there was a guarantee of not another, 9 months of Democratic control, but rather 2 years and 9 months, as an example, a lot of these people that are very clearly just obstructing at this point in time and spending tons of legal dollars trying to avoid disclosing information likely wouldn't be doing it, because that timeline, 2 years and 9 months versus just 9 months, would almost certainly lead to a bunch of this stuff being forced to be turned over to the January 6th committee, because that's what the last year has shown us. Many of these challenges to try to prevent documents from being turned over to the January 6th committee, ultimately a judge says you got to give them the information. We've seen it with Trump. We've seen it with others. Ultimately, Kimberly Guilfoyle ends up sitting with the committee and whatever else. But at this point, they have 9 months and really 6.5 until the election takes place. My instinct is that if indeed Republicans win in November, that period between November and January, I don't know how much investigation is going to take place then. So in some real sense, if we want to be conservative about it, Democrats have until October to get this done. That's now 5.5 months away. The running out the clock strategy does seem to make sense. And by the way, this is going to keep happening until there's actually consequences for it. Why wouldn't they just dig their heels in and refuse to comply? Because Trump's entire presidency was, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Yes, I said I was going to disassociate from my businesses, and I didn't. And I made $1.6 billion while I was president, and my kids made hundreds of millions. And Ivanka was sitting in for my Secretary of State at a meeting. And I can't even give you the full list of stuff. And it's been so the hell what? Because there have been no consequences whatsoever. And I will take it an even step further. I don't even know how much this committee ultimately matters. The committee, of course, if they find evidence of criminality, they can and they must refer it to the Department of Justice. As of right now, there's no evidence that the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland is genuinely willing to bring charges against any of these people. I'm not saying Joe Biden should get involved. He shouldn't. As I've said many times before, Biden should have no involvement in saying to the Justice Department, investigate here, find charges here. Absolutely not. But take Joe Biden out of this because he's not even involved. There is no evidence that Merrick Garland and his Justice Department are really willing to even consider doing what are admittedly politically very difficult things when it comes to the failed former president and his administration. So, of course, Republicans are doing what they're doing. Why wouldn't they? This is absolutely humiliating video of former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly. This is, I've said before that there's really no trend where I've met left-wing media people and right-wing media people, and there's no hard and fast rule about, oh, the lefties are nice and the righties aren't. In fact, my experience has been the exact opposite. Some of the most vile, mean, rude people I've met in this business are prominent left-wing hosts. I'm not going to name them. I think the one I've named is Ed Schultz. He has passed away, and at this point it's sort of irrelevant, but not a nice guy. One of the worst people that I've ever met. Everybody else is still alive. Most of the right wingers have been super nice. I mean, I don't like his politics, but Mike Huckabee, Sean Hannity, I could go. They're nice people when you meet them in person at conferences. They'll stand around and chat and talk shop and all of this different stuff. Okay, but there's nice and rude people on both sides. Bill O'Reilly has a reputation for being absolutely vile and disgusting. I've never met the guy. We now have a viral video of Bill O'Reilly at a JetBlue terminal at JFK Airport. Bill O'Reilly was trying to get to Turks and Caicos for his vacation, and the flight was late. And Bill O'Reilly absolutely loses it and starts threatening a JetBlue gate agent who has no say whatsoever about when flights come and go with his job. Starts threatening, you're going to lose your job. Here is Bill O'Reilly. People who are watching might notice Bill O'Reilly is looking extremely gaunt. I knew he was tall. He looks so skinny that it almost looks unhealthy. That's an aside. And here he is threatening the JetBlue worker with his job, all captured on camera. And by the way, can I just say, this was when the mask requirement was still in place at airports. Why does he have to pull the mask down to talk? I don't understand when people do this. But okay, that's not for me to understand. So now he starts to escalate.
Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly on Fox 5. He wants to see a manager.
So yeah, here Bill O'Reilly's asking for the manager.
3 hours late now.
What are you going to do? It's 3 hours late. The gate agent doesn't control that.
No. You're going to find out.
You're going to find out. Then he does the thing where he looks really closely at the guy's name tag.
You look at him. Warm
Now Bill O'Reilly, who's much taller than the employee, starts leaning in, intimidating. This is the most humiliating behavior. You're threatening with violence, the employee now says.
You're the one. I dare you. Is that what you said? I said you're lucky that you don't. You get that information. You're going to lose your job.
You're going to lose your job.
Okay? We'll see you.
We'll see. And off goes Bill O'Reilly lumbering away. One of the things, I am nowhere near as well known as Bill O'Reilly, but the number of people that come up to me in public and say hello has made me realize I always need to be on my best behavior. I can't be on a phone yelling at anybody. If I'm at the airport, I'm going to be extremely polite. If I'm talking to my girlfriend or whatever, I'm going to make sure that everything always looks as if everything is going swimmingly and beautifully, no matter what is going on, because this is exactly what I want to avoid. And the yelling at employees and threatening their jobs, particularly when, don't we all know how aviation works at this point in time? I once had a situation where I had a flight delayed 7 hours out of a very small airport where that's the one flight, and it was delayed because of weather. I was miserable. But what I'm going to do this, the person at the airport doesn't handle the flight coming and going. And it's just an absolutely humiliating situation to be caught in. And it is not a surprise. Sometimes rumors are true. Sometimes rumors are not true. Bill O'Reilly, widely known as a prick, for lack of a better term, and coming off exactly that way. And one of the things that for me is particularly bothersome is when individuals that are wealthier and in privileged positions are really talking down to service workers. I see it more often in restaurants where sometimes I will be with people who are not particularly mean people, and they just don't treat service workers well. They don't treat the wait staff well, and it makes me genuinely uncomfortable. I go out of my way to try to treat people well, and Bill O'Reilly clearly doing the opposite here. Not a surprise, coincides perfectly with what we thought we knew about Bill O'Reilly. We'll have the clip on our Instagram at David Pakman Show if you've just been listening today. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpakman.com. We're going to continue our conversations with 2022 midterm candidates. Today, we will be speaking with J.R. Majewski, who's a Republican candidate for Congress, hoping to represent Ohio's 9th district. J.R., it's really great to have you on today.
Thanks, Dave. Good pleasure to be here, sir. I appreciate it.
So why are you running? What led you to run?
Well, I've lived in the 9th district for pretty much my entire life, born and raised here. And I've become more and more active in the community. And, I decided that with Marcy Kaptur being having served office for 40 years and, just the way the country, I think, is going at this time, I think that it was time for someone like me to jump in the race, and someone that's actually born here and that was raised here, understands the district, grew up and lived through all the trials and tribulations that the district has to offer, and someone who served the country. I think that, I could be an asset to all the people that live here.
What things would you say are not going in the right direction in the district?
Representation, I think, is one thing. If you go across District 9 and talk to folks, regardless of their political affiliation, they find many people don't even know who Marcy is. And having been in office for 40 years, I find that troubling. Secondly, we're becoming more and more of a polarized nation. And I think getting back into the practice of engaging in healthy political discourse is missing. And, that's something that I've always been about. And, I really think that we need someone to bring that behavior and that mindset into the leadership position of representative for this district.
One of the things that I believe it's your communications director, it was your communications contact that we were in touch with, said was that you're a constitutional warrior and you want to take the country back. Can you talk about who do you want to take it back from?
I think it needs to be taken back from the establishment, from those that were elected by the people to fulfill, various roles of office. But I think the people are the general consensus, in my opinion, is that the people feel as if the government and our elected representatives are extremely indifferent from what our expectations were when we voted them into office.
Can you give an example of that? In other words, who would be an individual where we would say the expectation was A and here's B, which is what they're actually doing and we don't like it?
I would say example A would be Marcy Kaptur. You would expect if you made a phone call to your representative that you would get contacted and be contacted and responded to within a reasonable amount of time. And I've very rarely have met anyone that can describe to me a situation where they've called and they've got a response within 48, 72 hours. I mean, some folks do not even get responded back to.
So one of your big things would be, I think I'm hearing you say, you would set up a system to respond to constituents more quickly?
Absolutely. One of my campaign commitments, actually my first one, is that, I hold a town hall in every county within the district that I represent at least once a quarter.
When it comes to the constitutional piece of some of the material that we got from you, are there parts of the Constitution that you believe aren't currently being followed?
Yeah, I think free speech is being trampled on right now from various outlets, mostly from what I see as social media and big tech.
Okay.
I can give examples of that.
Now, just to be clear, JR, so our audience understands, when I said the Constitution, when you say free speech, am I right to understand that you mean the First Amendment to the Constitution?
Absolutely. Yeah, our First Amendment.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, the institutions you mentioned aren't governmental institutions, and the First Amendment only applies to government. So in what way would that apply to big tech or social media?
Well, generally speaking, I think we have a right to free speech. And when we have institutions that are meant to and intended to be a forum where public discourse can take place, and you have arbitrary decision makers that decide what is good and what is bad, I think that is, in my opinion, an assault against our First Amendment rights.
So let's dig into that, because I think this is such a meaty issue where there's so much to discuss. Will you concede that the First Amendment only applies to government? Like Twitter is not governed by the First Amendment. I hear you saying maybe you would like it to be, but do you agree that as far as the law is today, Twitter and the First Amendment are not intertwined in any way?
I would say that I wouldn't be prepared to answer that now in the manner in which I would like. I'd like to look into things a little bit more. But I would say that the general, perception is reality, right? And at this day and age, I feel as if there is, again, I think when I post something on Facebook and it gets taken down and it's labeled as promoting hate speech, when I'm just posting a picture of a meme of someone, there's no violence and it's just someone's face.
Okay.
I don't comprehend how that is, promoting violence, or to me.
Sure. That sounds like that's your opinion about a meme, but I guess so we can establish a set of facts on which we can then talk about this. Facebook having terms of service has nothing to do with the First Amendment to the Constitution and government abridging speech, right?
I can agree with that.
You can agree with that. So it sounds like you don't like the way some social media companies are enforcing terms of service. Is that fair?
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
In general, as a conservative, constitutional conservative, do you favor more or less business regulation?
Less, I would think, but it's all circumstantial. I mean, there has to be some regulations. Not all of our businesses are automatically ethical and principally driven. So
100%, 100%. But in general, you tend to favor letting businesses do what they want to do, as long as it's not against the law. Maybe, is that fair?
To a degree, but I mean, if some businesses work under the auspices of purchase agreements. That's not necessarily the law, or labor relations agreements. So I mean, there's just a fine line of being ethical and meeting meeting their responsibilities, regardless of where that responsibility stems from. 100%
fair. I'm with you all the way. As applied. I'm actually, oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm actually more of a libertarian.
Even more interesting then. So as a libertarian, would you agree that forcing a private company like Twitter or Facebook to have to publish your meme would be extremely authoritarian regulation of businesses?
I mean, I can agree. I can say yes, but I mean, it's all based on context, when I mean, there's nothing that explicitly limits my ability to post that meme because there was no violation of their terms of services. I can
Sure,
say
yeah,
that.
no, it sounds like you disagree with the enforcement, but you're not actually suggesting the government force Facebook to have to let you publish it. You just disagree with their choice.
Right. And
Fair.
I think the the arbitration needs to be taken out of the picture. It needs to be black and white. There needs to be, if they're going to have rules, those rules should be enforced.
Okay, fair. Yeah, no, I think we might
order.
disagree about how to enforce it, but I don't disagree with you in principle. When this is just kind of like a gut check question that I've been asking candidates that we talk to, and shockingly, sometimes they're not able to answer. Who's the current president of the United States, JR?
Joe Biden.
Okay, and do you think he was elected legitimately?
I think the election was stolen personally. I mean,
you do?
I think there were extreme irregularities with the election. Yes.
In which states?
Oh man, you got me on the spot. I know
Well, I guess let me put it a different way. There's no one state that Biden won that's in question that would have flipped it to Trump. So I guess what group of states might be part of it?
Well, I mean, Georgia had election irregularities, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even here in Ohio, we had some.
Okay. And when you say irregularities, there's been claims levied, like, for example, dead people voted twice, all these different things. There were, quote, massive dumps of ballots in the middle of the night, this type of thing. What specifically do you think happened, like in Georgia, for a good, and I mentioned Georgia because Republicans oversaw that and were in charge of the election. What do you think happened there?
I mean, personally, I don't speculate on those things. What I say is that, where there's smoke and there's fire.
Okay.
And I believe that I believe that our Congress had an obligation to, put those concerns of a lot of American people to rest. Whether they were right or wrong, our congressional members have an obligation. And the fact that we've moved forward and Congress hasn't put those issues to rest, it's exacerbated the problem where we have people on both sides of the aisle that are so polarized. I mean, look.
Well, help me understand putting to rest, because when I try to do a fair hearing, right, of the claims.
Sure.
And we had 63 different state level legal complaints filed, all found to be either without merit or to lack standing. And we had a variety of different investigations take place in different states. There was one in Georgia. There was one in Arizona. Sometimes it turns out Joe Biden won by even more. What would satisfy you that would, quote, put it to rest, as you say?
A full-on audit of the states that have asked for one. If Arizona claims that they've had election irregularities and they are the people there are asking for an audit, I believe that our Congress should allow that to move forward. And
but they did an audit in Arizona, and Biden got even more votes.
Okay.
The Cyber Ninjas did the audit. Was that audit not satisfactory?
That's true. You're right on that. What about Wisconsin, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I guess the question would be, if there are irregularities, why is it that no courts seem to agree with that, even when it's Trump-appointed judges? I'm trying to figure it out for myself.
Yeah, but I mean, you're somewhat of putting a slight on it's Republican, this Republican. I'm not looking at it in that manner. I'm looking at it from the people.
Okay.
If the people are asking for, I mean, it's not a partisan argument. It's if the people believe that the election was stolen, whether if it's they believe it in their hearts or they're out surfing the internet and they're running rampant on message boards, right? We have in my opinion, we have an obligation as the government to put those concerns to rest.
Let's talk a little bit about foreign policy.
Sure.
Donald Trump was different than many previous Republicans who were more neoconservative, like George W. Bush, in that Trump talked a lot about he's going to keep us out of wars. As a combat veteran yourself and as a Republican, what was your sense of the kind of Trumpian foreign policy idea of wars are bad and I'm going to keep us out of them?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think that, who wants to have, I mean, what kind-minded, kind-hearted American wants to be in a war? I mean, I think wars are bad. They're good for the economy in some respects, but they're bad for our humanitarian efforts across the world. I mean,
Fair.
the United States should not be engaging in foreign wars. I mean, diplomacy should be our go-to at all times.
On that note, are you pleased with Joe Biden's handling of Russia's invasion of Ukraine so far, committing to no boots on the ground and sticking to it as far as we can see?
Yes. I mean, I don't believe that we should be engaging with a military effort there. I'm a little bit displeased with the messaging that's come out and the turnaround. In talking about having a no-fly zone, sending military equipment. I mean, to me, that's something that I mean, no one wants to see Ukrainians die, but Vladimir Putin has made it very, very clear where he stands on what he would perceive as a direct threat, and he did highlight some of those things. And I don't think we're doing enough from a diplomatic perspective.
You want to see more diplomacy, but you're happy that we are not engaging on the ground.
Absolutely.
Fair. One of the people that endorsed you is Michael Flynn, and he has said, in my opinion, some really crazy things lately, including that that we should be doing coups and a lot of really aggressive and almost sometimes like delusional Christian dominionist sort of stuff. Is that a perspective you would bring if you were elected, or is that not really your scene?
I mean, it's hard for me to answer that. And I know what you're asking for.
Yeah.
But look, I value my relationship with General Flynn. He's always been a very, very respectful guy to me. I have not seen, I would not seen or heard what you're saying. So,
okay.
I think what you see with me is what you get. I wear my cards on my sleeve. I understand the obligations that I have, taking this position and becoming an elected official. My job is to represent the people. I think Congress is riddled with ideologists that are looking to, further pursue their self-interest. I'm a guy that's very young in my career, very successful, and I don't need to be a representative. Financially, I'm much more better off continuing my career in the nuclear power industry. But again, I'm going to bring to the table eyes, ears, and the fortitude and willingness to help everyone in my district, regardless of their political affiliation. But I'm not going to. Who I choose to pursue for endorsements. I mean, look, I got to win I'm in a contested Republican primary. General Flynn, I consider him a patriot, and I like General Flynn. So, as far as the testament to his character, I can't speak on it. I can just tell you that when I think of General Flynn, I think of a guy that was a very successful general in our United States Army, and he's always been kind to me. And I haven't heard anything radical that I could attest to.
Well, I think I'm reading between the lines a little here, JR, and understanding what you're saying, but I'm glad to send you some citations.
Sure. I'm not trying to dodge the question.
I gotcha. No, I understand the situation. You're in a contested situation. I get it. Listen, I get it. Listen, you've been eminently reasonable in our conversation, and I think this is eye-opening. We've been speaking with J.R. Majewski, who's running in Ohio's 9th District, a Trump supporter, but also a guy that we can engage with on a reasonable basis. JR, I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate yours. And I would say to your listeners, there's so much polarization out there right now. And, people see me, they see the Trump lawn, they see the name Trump. And, look, we have to work with each other. We have to talk. And, this one issue, line in the sand behavior. And, we are Americans at the end of the day, but even before that, we're human. And, we have to find a landscape in which we can all get back together, because this country is going down the tubes if we continue on the path we're on. And it's going to take both sides of the aisle to work together to get this done. I don't know if that's possible the way things are going, but you know what, damn it, I'm going to try. So,
JR, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Here's an interesting follow-up on a story from earlier this year. Back in January, we covered this guy named Christopher Key, who was promoting the drinking of urine in order to treat or prevent COVID. And we talked about it at the time. And I explained to you then that a lot of this COVID quack stuff, it's a recycling of old ideas that have been going around for a long time. Urine has been promoted in the past for treating cancer, even though the Cancer Society says there's no evidence at all for therapeutic use of urine. They've talked about using urine to irrigate the sinuses, almost like a pea neti pot for brushing teeth, applying it directly to the skin as a skin treatment of some kind. And the origins or the oranges of this urine therapy thing is the idea that certain tumor proteins are present in the urine of cancer patients. And the idea is if you introduce urine into the digestive tract by drinking it, the erroneous belief is your body will make antibodies against the tumor proteins and it'll destroy the cancer. That's like one example. Now, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. It's true that urine can contain tumor antigens. There's no evidence that drinking it, massaging with it, bathing with it, cooking with it, or any other urine application is going to stimulate antibody production in any way, fight cancer, treat any symptom or disease. So that was the idea before from Christopher Key, was the drinking of urine. He's now moved on to promoting injecting urine. Here is a clip of him at least claiming that he's injecting himself with aged urine. You know how sometimes people will age steaks? This is aged urine.
I'm doing intramuscular. I have your iodine, but I'm just going to sterilize it with my own urine.
Right.
And whatnot. But talk about the stem cells.
Right.
All right. So the stem
And as this is going on, you see him take out a syringe.
cells, pretty much every type of stem cell is available in your urine. So stem cells are the base pure DNA cell that will start replicating additional cells for regeneration and repair. I mean, everybody's hearing about regeneration, repair. People are flying to Thailand to get stem cell injections done over there.
Yeah. So the idea there is that Christopher Key has injected himself with urine. And some people wrote to me saying, David, he clearly isn't really injecting himself. I don't think it matters, because if people believe it, it's dangerous. And this is all from the same school of thought that sometimes includes homeopathy. Sometimes it includes, some of these other, I'm not going to wrap too much on it. This is what it is. Okay. Now, this is extraordinarily dangerous. If Christopher Key said he's injecting the urine intramuscularly. If you inject urine into a vein, it can get very bad very quickly. There's actually a study called Lethal Sepsis and Multi-Organ Failure after accidental injection of urine in a drug addict. And the story is about a 33-year-old drug addict that injected urine because he kept it in the fridge in case he needed it for a drug screening. And then he thought it was methadone and injected it, and it went into a vein and was confused and shivering and had all sorts of different symptoms, sepsis. It was crazy. Okay. So this is all extraordinarily dangerous, and they just don't seem to be stopping. Now, I genuinely wonder, are they really making money with this? I don't know. The guy who's interviewing Christopher Key here is Dr. Edward Group, and he runs some kind of natural healing thing. And does he make money promoting urine therapy? I just don't know. I don't know exactly what the money piece is. Now, as I've said before, there is one possible legitimate life-saving use of urine, and it is as follows. If you are completely dehydrated, you're without water, you're on the verge of dying, there is a short period during which drinking your own urine could extend your life just enough to be rescued or to get to water, right? Urine is 95% water, and it's believed that drinking your own urine might allow you to survive an extra day or two. It is, strictly speaking, safe. It replenishes some lost water, but the problem is the other 5% of urine that's not water is not something you want a lot of in your body, right? You're taking the stuff that your kidneys have filtered out and you're putting it back in and putting it back into your kidneys. And this can cause really bad symptoms and long-term problems. But if there's anything that in the urine therapy world we would say is sort of legit, it would be you might extend a deadly situation with no water by a day or two. And that's basically it. Absolutely horrifying stuff. Continuing our COVID quack cures, treatments, and whatever part of the show, I'm going to play a clip for you, unfortunately, of someone that was taken kind of seriously by some early in the pandemic. There's this is a so-called vaccine expert named Stella Emanuel. And early in the pandemic, there were a bunch of people taking her very seriously. She appeared on the Stu Peters show. This is the guy who thought when he had a cold not long ago that someone weaponized a cold and gave it to him. He probably just had COVID. He's unvaccinated. He brought on Stella Emanuel to defend his satanic snake venom documentary. And she says that the world is filled with demonic clones. This is someone that the right was going to as an authority on COVID earlier in the pandemic. Listen to this.
I saw people walking on the street, and some were human and some were other. Some were demons, and the human beings didn't realize that they were walking around with demons. So right now we are in a time where I would actually say people have been cloned and they are walking among us. If you watch the movie called They Live, Live, it was created by John Carpenter. This is the world we live in right now. And the only way we're going to survive is if human beings wake up, stop all the crazy factions the devil has put us in, and start praying and crying out to God, because that is the only way we're gonna survive.
Now, often with these folks, I come to you and I say, this is not a medical doctor. The crazy thing is, Stella Emanuel is a medical doctor. She is, as far as I know, she is a physician and a pastor. And she was pushing hydroxychloroquine, absent any evidence. She said social distancing and masks don't work, and all of this different stuff. Now, as a reminder about Stu Peters, he is this radical right-wing broadcaster. He had the cold or a flu or COVID, and he said, I'm not going to get tested, but I believe that I was targeted with this. Someone injected me with it. This is a very, very dangerous guy. Here's another clip where Stu Peters speaks to a guy named Brian Ardis, and they claim COVID is a synthesized form of snake venom. That's the snake venom connection.
Well, what about the name Corona?
Right.
Does it have a Latin definition or a definition at all? So I actually looked up what's the definition. And on dictionary.com, it brings up 13 definitions. Corona, religiously, ecclesiastically, means gold ribbon at the base of a mitre.
Uh-oh.
And I didn't know what a mitre was. So I copied it and pasted it and then hit images. So this actually could read the Pope's venom pandemic.
Whoa.
It also can read crown. Corona means crown also in Latin terms. Corona means crown. Visually, we see kings represented with a crown symbol.
Oh, man.
So put that together for me. King Cobra venom. It actually,
guys, the virus is the venom of a king cobra.
Could read king cobra venom pandemic.
Now, just as a reminder, Ardis is a chiropractor. He's not an infectious disease doctor. He's not a medical doctor. He's not a virologist. He's a chiropractor, and he believes he has figured it out. These people are dangerous, and unfortunately, they have followers. Very, very sad stuff. Tragic, really. We're continuing this discussion of whether it's reasonable to go to someone of a certain identity to ask questions about that identity. How did it start? Well, last week I got a voicemail, or maybe it was Monday. Now I don't remember. Last week or Monday, I got a voicemail from someone saying, hey, David, I have some Jewish questions. Yiddish, actually. What's a shmekel? What's a shekel? And I answered them. And then on Tuesday, the Eggman called in and said, David, that's inappropriate. That's anti-Semitic. It's like going to a black woman and asking her to touch her hair. And I said, I don't think so. I think it's logical that you would go to people that you believe might have more knowledge about something than you, and you ask them about it, as long as it's being done in good faith. But the Eggman didn't like that. We have a new voicemail caller. We're going through every identity. We had a Jewish man call in, the Eggman, to give his perspective. Now a gay man called in to say he welcomes people asking him questions about homosexuality. Take a listen to this.
Hey, David, this is Rich from Palm Springs, California, and I was just listening to your piece where you played the Eggman saying that he thought it was disrespectful to ask you about Jewish languages and sayings and such.
Yep.
And I agree with you. I think he's wrong. As a gay man, I have no problem answering questions. I find a lot of straight people have questions about gay lifestyle and terms and stuff like that, and they're truly curious, but they're not going to sit at home and Google stuff.
I mean, maybe they would, but that's not really an issue.
And as long as it's respectful and not just like some ignorant jerk being an ignorant jerk.
Yeah. So what I think is inappropriate is once I was at a brunch. This was so awkward. I was at a brunch, and someone it was like around Passover time at some other year around Passover time, and completely unprovoked, just on the basis of figuring out I was Jewish from mentioning having been at Passover, this woman says to me in a very antagonistic way, "Can you explain to me why the U.S. government sends money to Israel?" And it's like I'm expected as a Jewish person to defend the foreign policy of the United States. And it was clearly bad faith. It was clearly antagonistic. It's like going to, it's like going to a Muslim person and saying, "Can you defend why the U.S. sends money to Pakistan or Egypt," or something like that. That's completely bad faith. It was a completely inappropriate question. I don't know. I'm not the spokesperson for that. Why are you asking me? But it's different than someone says, "Hey, what's schmeckel? Do you know what schmeckel is?" I think that's okay. And I think it is all context, as the caller points out. We have a great bonus show for you today. Ukraine says Russia's offensive in the Donbass has begun and is rapidly escalating. We're going to talk about it. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is trying to strip Disney of self-governing power. That doesn't sound like letting businesses do what they want. We'll talk about it. And Sarah Palin, as we've said, she's trying a comeback. She's running for a member of the House, but she's running up against a problem, which is that her star power seems to have dramatically dimmed in her home state of Alaska. Can she still win? We'll talk about it. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. How do you get the bonus show? It's very easy. You go to joinpacman.com and you sign up. And instantly, you'll be able to listen to the bonus show or watch the bonus show, whichever is your preference. If you're more an audio person, you can listen. If you're more a video person, you can watch. You could also play the video, but only listen to it. I don't know why you would do that, but you could. Sign up at joinpacman.com. We'll see you then. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. Cheese Butter is the delicious gourmet cheese melt that blends 4 indulgent cheeses and seasoned butter. I love this stuff. Perfect on bread, bagels, sandwiches, veggies, and more. And you'll get 20% off when you go to cheesebutter.com/Pacman. The link is down below.